October 2019. October is tomorrow. So we are going to have 3 million people, all of them in emergency situation. It is not something to wish away. It is something we really need to address, because that is a huge proportion of our population. So what are we going to do? How do we make sure that these households are resilient enough to be able to recover and to be able to mitigate the effects of this food insecurity? So with me, we have a panel here, very able panel. Many of them I've known for a long time, and many of them have been involved in programming over the years in Kenya and outside, and they will help us to understand what we have done right, what we have not done right, and what we should do as we move into the future. Thank you. So I will start by, I think I had introduced them and you can remember them as the, being one of the counties that have been experiencing this problem for many, many decades. That is not to say that other parts of Kenya do not experience the problem, no. But this is one area that can give us good information in terms of what they have done over the years to address the problem. We do know that we have organizations, we have structures in government that have been trying to address the whole issue of drought. And maybe Mr. Mwangela, my really concern and question is that maybe you could highlight some of the mechanisms that Isiolo County is currently using to address shocks due to emergencies and mitigate climate change.
Good afternoon. My name is Lawrence Mongela. I'm the CC for Isiolo. And I wanted just to make my remarks in regards to our topic at hand. I want to say that, first of all, we don't live in isolation. We know now these days the world is like we are in a global village. So normally on the issue of food and nutrition security, we also try to address the SDGs, that is number 1 and 2, food and not to hunger, and also that we want to improve the food situation, that everybody has got access to food. We also, when we come to Kenya, we look at Vision 2030. We also get ideas from there, and of course, we are not forgetting the big 4 agenda, food and nutrition security. We try to address as a county also so to contribute. And I want to say that in the counties, our guiding principle is what we call CIDP, the County Integrated Development Plan. All the information that we want to put in a given period of governance is contained in this document called CIDP. And of course, we don't forget the governance manifesto. So governors, depending on the area that they come from, they promise the citizens certain issues that they will address during their tenure. And as far as I'm concerned, like for example, Isiolo, one of the issues we try to address is issue on food security, because drought there is key and sometimes they can be devastating. And in the special program and department, quite some resources allocated there to address those issues when the drought come. And then we have the annual development plans. Every year we draw our activities from the ADP. And then, of course, nationally we have got the structures which try to coordinate whatever we are doing, because we have now the two levels of government. You have the national government and the county government. And then when we meet at the Council of Governors, the COG. So at the Council of Governors, as far as I'm concerned, in this sector, we have what we call Joint Agriculture Sector Steering Committee, JASCOM. And in that JASCOM, we, like myself, the CC for agriculture, we have got a CC COG committee where we meet on quarterly basis and we address on our issues, and also we learn from one another. Our chair presently is Honorable Marian Somo, who is the CC for Transoia. And we are about to meet, I think we'll meet next month. Sometimes we delay a little bit because of stringency of work. But when you meet there, we elaborate on issues and try to see how to address them as a CC for agriculture, livestock, and fisheries. Then what are we doing specifically for Isiolo? You know, Isiolo, 80% of the community depend on livestock. Livestock there is very key. And most of the livestock are quite vulnerable to drought, and especially the sheep and goats. But we are trying to promote this animal called the camel. The camel, if you can remember, people call it the sheep of the desert. It has got a hump, and people think it stores water there. But I think it's not water, it's fat, which is used during the dry period. So Isiolo, we have promoted the camel. We have now trying to promote milk production because it produces quite a substantial amount of milk during the dry period. So Isiolo, we have got two women group already who are trying to harness that milk from the camel, and they are selling milk to Nairobi. And I want to say that what is specific to Isiolo, to the Asaro area, we have FCDC, this Frontier County Development Council, and again under that FCDC, we have the sector for agriculture, the sector forum for agriculture and livestock, and also we meet so that we look at ways and means of trying to address our concerns together. And then Isiolo specifically, we have a county steering group. The county steering groups is where all under the Secretary of National Drought Management Authority, and is chaired by the governor, and also they co-share with the county commissioner. So in this county steering group is where all the partners who are having anything to do with the issues of food, and those issues of drought, water, and the latent issues, we meet together and discuss, and then know who is supposed to go and work where to avoid, for example, duplication, because those areas are a little bit. The county steering group is very important. And then what about now this JASCOM, the one we talked about at the national level, we have also cascaded it to the county, where we have the CASCOM, County Agriculture Steering Committee, whereby all of us meet, the NGOs and the water department, that live in the sector, and even Earth, and then we look at how we are going to do our business such that once again, it becomes like an entry point for anybody who want to come and work in Isiolo. So, for example, I want to give an example of what you refer to as USAID partners. They call them Partnership for Resilient and Economic Growth. They also come under that forum, and then when we do our interventions, we now try to make sure everybody is actually covered. So what I want to say in a nutshell is that as of now, for example, the drought is coming, mechanisms have been put in place. There's a document we prepare called drought contingency plan. This drought contingency plan, when we find now we are at the level that we have reached, we start doing interventions. Yeah, intervention. Like now, we have received from the national government 6,000 bags of ranch cubes to give to the animals, and we have also received 2,000 of the same food from FAO. And the county government has also factored some money to buy the feed for the livestock, because the livestock, as I said, is key in that area. So we try to salvage this livestock and get at least some food coming to the community, or some income. So generally, what I want to say is that budgetary allocation, as we had in the morning, that nationally maybe we are not even doing well, But at the county level, there is a deliberate effort to try and increase towards that integration from the Malabo, where by now, like Isiolo County, we are almost reaching a 9. So we are at the 9% of the total budget allocation of the county. So water tracking, we are also doing that one to ensure that at least people get water. But by and large, what we look at or the main issues of these areas sometimes can be also conflict, which you may not be able, you may forget when you are looking at the food and communities. So in a nutshell, that is what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mungole. He has shed light, especially on the structures, governance structures that are required really to mitigate these things of this issue of resilience, and very interesting to note about the drought contingency plan. As he was still talking about, I would want us to continue with the thread about the structures and see what is it that we can learn from there. In that case, he talked about the Kenya Food Security Steering Group and what they are doing. And in this case, I would want to just throw a small question to Joyce Owiga of World Food Program. We know that the World Food Program is a key partner in the Kenya Food Security Steering Group and has been leading response to drought emergencies. Joyce, please highlight some of the nutrition resilience mitigation initiatives that the World Food Program is currently supporting across different livelihood zones.
Yes, thank you, Terry. So I will talk about what WFP is doing in terms of nutrition and our link to resilience. WFP has been doing kind of what we call emergency nutrition, or really treatment of acute malnutrition, and that we have been doing since 2006. And as Terry said, we keep having these recurrent episodes of drought. So about 2013, we changed our strategy, where now we are going more into nutrition sensitive programming. So actually our nutrition specific, or the treatment program, we are scaling down as we continue to support capacity within government, but we are also increasing our scale for the nutrition sensitive programming. So what does that mean? It means that all our food security interventions, our resilience interventions, must have a component of nutrition. And not only a component, but we actually must have a deliberate objective that is measured at the end of the project period in terms of, did you improve the nutrition status? And this we had to do because of this recurring vulnerability we are seeing in the arid counties. So right now what we are doing in terms of resilience, we have a broad resilience program for actually the entire arid areas. And what we're doing, we have 3 focus areas. So the first one is supporting value chains. We have established value chains in the arid counties. Now, we are linking nutrition, or we are strengthening or layering nutrition to these value chains. What do I mean by that? For example, a value chain like sweet potato is being promoted, is being implemented in Samburu Isiolo. So how best do we support that such that we actually get nutrition outcomes out of that? And not only the outcomes, and that would be the value addition in terms of the yellow-fleshed sweet potato, the orange-fleshed sweet potato, but linking it to nutrition interventions. A big challenge we have in the arid counties is the chronically high acute malnutrition levels. I mean, you have some of these counties with, like almost 30%. Like now we have Turkana and parts of Marsabit with a gum of 30% and above. So we have very high vulnerability in the arid counties. But this vulnerability, we are seeing it more amongst children 6 to 59 months. When we do assessments, what we get from this is we do have a challenge, not only in terms of food availability, but also utilization, particularly for children 6 to 23 months. Number one, the options are just not there. They are not many. And then even for the options that are there, the use is a problem. So we need to link our food security, our resilience interventions to answering that question of how best do we answer this gap or this vulnerability with children 6 to 23 months. And we have a very good opening with strengthening of the value chains, because if you're doing something like the orange sweet potato and you can add some value to it and we promote its consumption amongst women for their children 6 to 23 months, now we are answering the question of availability and also nutrient density. So this is something we are going into, supporting value chains and making sure that nutrition is actually integrated in that value chain, and the outcome not only supports household income, but it also supports nutrition. And another thing that we are doing, now that we know that utilization is a problem, is what we are calling behavior change communication. Now, I know many of us, the nutrition, know what behavior change is, but not, I don't like to call it behavior change, but promoting good practice for these communities, particularly now that we know that we have a challenge in terms of infant feeding, and having innovative ways of actually reaching these women, these guardians, the caretakers, the parents. Because what we have done traditionally is to kind of have the nutrition education class where we kind of expect mothers to come together, we sit down, we talk about something, but now being more innovative in how best can we reach these mothers, knowing that they also have other competing interests. So bringing in the element of innovation, of technology, what is more likely to work than the routine health education that we are giving at the health facility. So we are having that behavior change component, we are strengthening the value chains, and we are simply layering nutrition on all our interventions. We are reaching a very high number of vulnerable people. I think right now we have about 400,000 across the arid counties. Now, we are interacting with these populations on a monthly basis. So what we are doing is layering nutrition, health and nutrition interventions with this exposure that we have with them, such that you don't only come and get the food security resilience intervention, but you also get exposure to the health and nutrition. And it is very dynamic, because now we are looking at how best do we link them to the health related social protection programs, NHIF, Linda Mama, these kind of things. So how best can we use that exposure to actually have them have better access to health? Because as many of you know, access to health in these regions is also not the easiest. You have people walking 5 to 40 kilometers to access health services. So when we have that interaction with them, then how can we also give them a package of interventions? So these are some of the things that we are doing, knowing that yes, we have been in the arid counties for this many years, we have a very good footprint, so how best can we strengthen nutrition? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Joyce, for the efforts that they are doing in the whole area of resilience building at the household level, at community level. And one of the areas she has mentioned is that they support value chain and the behavior change, and then they make sure that they integrate nutrition in all the programs that they are implementing. Let's move away from that slightly and go into another area. When I was growing up, fish was just for the people around the lake region. It was known for the people around the lake region. And these days, it is actually unaffordable. One piece of fish is like 300-400 shillings in the region I come from, but Nairobi here, I'm told, is even up to 500 shillings. So, Mr. Mwangi, fisheries production from the natural resources is dwindling. What is the government doing to make the subsector resilient in view of the changing environment? A very nutritious food. What is the government doing so that it's affordable and available to everybody, so that we can diversify our diets?
Okay, thank you, Terry. My name is Albert Mwangi. I work for the Fisheries Department in the Ministry of Agriculture. So yesterday, the PS took us through the issue of productivity of crops. Productivity is dwindling. Production is going down. I guess the same case with livestock. And sad enough, it is the case in fisheries. Because the production now from the natural resources has gone down to maybe around 350 metric tons, 350,000 metric tons annually. That is from our lakes, from our oceans, from our rivers, from fish farming, and so on. Our demand is very high, an upward of 500 to 800 estimated 1,000 metric tons. So, and that is why we are having fish that is coming from some countries. And there's a lot of politics about that fish. So our stocks are dwindling. What is causing that? We have been overfishing over a period of years. The environment is changing because of use of fertilizers and pesticides. So our lakes are getting polluted. So productivity is going down. The issue of climate change. Most of our rivers are drying. Our lakes, some of them are also, they're dwindling, if I may use that word. So we don't have a space to now have what you call national areas of fish production. So, as you have asked, the government is concerned about that. And that is why the government has come up with strategies whereby you can use, technology. You use other methods of fish production like aquaculture. Aquaculture is this situation where you have fish ponds in your homes. So you can use the earthen fish ponds in areas, depending on now the quality and the structure of the soils that you have in your area. So if the soil is not good, you could use the earth liners, what you call the dam liners, the polythene bags. You could also use laceways. There are others you call what you call LAS, recycling water systems. And then there is also the element of use of cage culture. Those who come from, or those who have visited Lake Victoria, you are seeing there is this intense fish farming, whereby you're having a small area of space, then it's put in the ocean or in the lake, and then you can put in quite an amount of fish, and then you feed intensely, like the way we do zero grazing or poultry farming. So those are some of maybe the strategies that we are encouraging farmers to pick up, so that now we can get back to where we are. We can have more fish in our households, and we can have more fish for our country. So we're also trying to what you call promote fish eating. Use fish eating, not even fish consumption, fish eating in some communities. You see, fish is one of the most nutritious products or food, if I may say. All the macronutrients you need, all the micronutrients you need is in fish. Count them, all of them. But again, sadly enough, you see there are some communities, like a community I come from, you rear your fish in those farms, but incidentally you don't consume. So even in our projects now, we are trying to introduce what we call now the nutritional indicators. That is, how much after harvesting will you be using? Don't produce all to sell. Because you'll produce in Nyeri, you'll sell everything to Nairobi. Then we have, still on that issue of consumption, if you go to Turkana today, thousands and thousands of tons are going to DRC. Because Turkana, they're not consuming fish. But again, you speak, he was talking about the issue of malnutrition in Turkana. So what can be done to that dried fish that is going to Turkana? So again, we are looking into that, whereby we can establish ways, these campaigns, Eat More Fish campaigns, teach the people that the fish is nutritious, teach them about the cash law change and those beliefs that fish is not snake, fish is not bad, consume fish. So those are some of the strategies that we're using so that now we can ensure that our communities are having, they're consuming fish. Is that adequate? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are seeing that with the fish, we can be able now to see some ways in which we can mitigate some of these factors that have to do with the drought and really diversify our diets. And not only that, he has mentioned communities which traditionally were not consuming fish, and now they need really to be sensitized towards fish eating. We do know that we have our development partners who are also supporting us, and we have David here with us. All our work contributes to resilience building. The bottom line of this is good nutrition is both an input and an outcome of strengthened resilience. Through USAID, you have been assisting the Kenya government to improve resilience of Kenyan communities. Maybe you could highlight to the audience here today, what are some of the shocks affecting Kenyans which the US government has focused on to be able to support us address?
Thank you. Good evening, or afternoon. All this talk about food is making me hungry. I'm ready to eat. But seriously, so part of it, you stole my thunder, because I think there's like two messages I want to get across. And one is, yes, nutrition is an input. So when we talk a lot about resilience, we also need to think, I always say, and Mildred, who works with me, I bore her to death, but I always say, like, nutrition's everywhere, but it's nowheres. Who owns nutrition, right? And so if we think of this, and I think the same thing happens with resilience, and thank you again too for defining resilience, because I think we see resilience in different ways. That nutrition has an integral part to resilience, right? So it's an input and it's an outcome for improved resilience. But the other message I want to get across, and is a little bit more controversial and probably a little bit more harder to achieve in a sense when we're talking about resilience, is moving away from food security to actually dietary adequacy at the household level, right? So how do we get there? How do we move to that spot when we're talking about resilience? I don't have enough time in the day to talk about all the things we do in resilience, and from my personal perspective, resilience, I always talk about resilience in a big R and a little r. You know, the big R, resilience means many things. It can mean different shocks. Shocks is not just drought. It's a health shock that you have in a family. It's someone that unfortunately passed away or has a health issue, or there's price shocks or market shocks. And so we're always thinking about what are these stresses at the household level that we can mitigate, and what are the measures and the modalities to work around these things. So I think as we move forward, then we have the little r, which, we work really closely with WFP around the reduction of humanitarian caseloads. And I think this is really important. And I'll talk about that in a second, what we're trying to develop in the southeastern region of the country. So I think those things, when we talk about resilience, we're thinking about what are the shocks and stresses? What are those capacities? We always tend to think communities need things, but first of all, what are the assets that are available in those communities? What are the social networks that we need to link into that can address a lot of these issues? And so, the strategies around that, and those strategies can be very, very household driven. It can be collective, capacity, or it could be like the CEC said, it's these mechanisms that we've tried to, we've put in place and that are working. And I think they're really key. And then as a development community, speaking for the development community, and certainly for the county governments, we're really thinking about what then are the outcomes? What's the data points around that? What are the incentives around, so we can start really thinking about the well-being outcomes of those families? So for USAID, we do a gamut of things. So I'm the Feed the Future coordinator. If you don't know what Feed the Future is, you're probably better off. No. Feed the Future is our government initiative around agriculture and food security. We have a $41 million budget this year, and it's large. We work in 17 counties across the country. We work in 5 counties in the north and in 3 of the ACEL counties in the southeast, but I would argue ACEL counties also exist in the west. And I think we're defining and expanding that definition of ACEL counties. But I think, so we're looking at various mechanisms. The CCSA talked about the PREG model that we're really looking at. How do we coordinate? And I think this is the ultimate, I push this all the time. Coordination, coordination, coordination. And coordination is not easy. And so we're really thinking about how do we involve all the vested stakeholders in this process, including households and communities, to do this work. To really think in terms of if anyone's in the resilience field, they think of capacities, the absorptive capacity. How are households, how can they bounce back to a stress or a shock? So we look at that one level. We also look at the level then is around the adaptability of those households to really address this. And then, of course, we ultimately want to get to the transformational piece of it. And I think this is really what we're trying to get after with the mechanisms. So I think we're doing multiple things. We do a lot of value chain work in crops and dairy. And in the north, we do a lot of stuff around livestock. So in respect to the north, if we're talking about resilience, it's looking at the market system of the livestock itself, but also what are the alternative markets that are available, right? And so we're also trying to expand the definition of what those markets mean. How do we work in drought-tolerant crops? Certainly in the southeast, looking at is a very nutrient-dense kind of capacity as well. So drought-tolerant crops to look at things. I shouldn't say this, I have a Kenyan audience, but I'm not a big fan of maize. Right? And so we need to kind of culturally shift, nutrient-dense crops into that dietary diversity within families. Now, I understand totally, maize is important, but we also need to think of other things. So again, moving that towards that dietary adequacy, I think is extremely important. But I also think as AID starts to move forward and collaborate and think of value chain work, nutrition work, we do democracy and governance, and we have Food for Peace people that really look at the humanitarian side of things. So we really do a whole spectrum of interventions when we speak of resilience. But we also try to very much personalize it. So if Esther is out there as a mother, we fully recognize that Esther has very specific needs. Right? And so how do we, as USAID, layer investments, sequence them, but also link them to other investments? Because USAID can't do everything. We can't fund everything, just as World Food Program can't, the county governments can't. How do we work in unison here? So looking at Esther's ability to, one, she's going to need income generation. So how do we work at the household level in terms of farming and agricultural production issues to raise incomes? We know incomes don't directly correlate to nutritional gains. So then how do we bring in other aspects? We know Esther has 3 kids and she needs to send them to school. So what are the educational investments there? So there's really thinking in terms cross-sectorally of how we're really addressing nutrition in that space with that household. So I have a question to you, because I think I'm sitting up here talking to you. For those of you who are from ACELs and are nutrition points in the counties, can you raise your hand? Who are nutritionists from the counties? Raise them high, don't be bashful. So there's several of you. So I'm going to ask you a question later, because this lady's going to get after me if I ask you now. But I really want to know from you, what is that one challenge that you can gravitate towards right now and tell the audience, this is what my challenge is in this ACEL county when we're thinking in terms of resilience and your specific role as a nutritionist in the county? I would like to know, because there's challenges in our work, and it helps me to figure out as we're programming what are we missing, right? And you're here, and I need to take advantage of that. Sorry, but yeah, so that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, David, for the insight into what USAID is doing to support government. And for his question, the people from the counties will get 2 of you immediately we finish with the panel to be able to give a response and set the discussions rolling. Thank you very much. So I'll take another round of very brief questions. I request my panelists kindly be brief so that we can open it up to the floor. And I would want again to go back to our Waziri from Isiolo. We are very passionate about women and children. I think all over Kenya, all over the world. Yesterday I was watching the climate change conference, global conference, and there was a child who was very passionate about climate change, and it touches your heart. You know, the child is really making an appeal about it. So milk production has declined to 50%, while food prices are on the rise. That we acknowledge. Are there any measures that pastoralist communities can adapt to protect vulnerable households with children under 5 or pregnant women during this period?
Yeah, thank you very much for that concern. As I indicated, that in Isiolo, actually most of the support that we give, we take a lot of cognizance of the women, and the two organizations, that is the Anolei milk processing for the camel, and the Tawakal, actually it is women who are doing it. And that whenever we have drought like at the moment, when food distribution is being done, the only sure way you know that the food reaches the household is giving to the ladies. Because if you give men, sometimes they pass through the shop and they serve the food. So that is one way that we normally consider. The other concern is that we in Isiolo, as you have already earned, Isiolo is developing very fast and is going to become the resort city, and we are trying to do some very serious interventions and raising together with the development partner of opening an international abattoir. This international abattoir is going to unlock the potential of that area, and we are feeling that we are going to have a tannery, and this tannery can be managed by a women group in conjunction with Meru University. They can give them assistance, and that way it can have a multiplier effect, and quite a number of people can be employed by that business. So the way it is that I've not looked at the actual details because I was just told to come and just be a panelist here within a short notice, but I would have looked at the actual statistics. But actually, our project partners, most of them, they are working with the ladies in Isiolo. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and you have shed very good light on that, and thank you for being available. Mr. Mwangi, we are back to the fishing communities and the non-fishing communities also. Maybe you could also shed some light on what activities you are promoting amongst these fishing communities that are related to fishing and non-fishing communities that are related to nutrition.
Let me say, okay, thank you. Let me say the focus now is now on increasing production, availability, then accessibility, and then, access, availability, and affordability. And those are basically the pillars of Agri-Nutrition. So I'll pick a scenario of the coastal communities. They don't have enough fish, yet the sea lands almost 600 kilometers. The reason being that, you see, what you call now the shoreline fisheries has become, extinct. Imeisha kabisa. So the only thing that now we will do is get into the deep sea and exploit what is there because it's enormous and it's not been tapped for a long time. So that is why the government came up with the issue of the brew economy exploitation. And there is a whole operation going on in that area. There's a lot of investment. So the government of fisheries, the Department of Fisheries is doing what you call now the fishing fleet development. So when you're having partnerships from all over the world, people are coming now out to fish openly instead of the way it used to be done sometimes back, where you fish and hide. So we have now the capacity to monitor what is going on in our deep seas, and there has been great investment on that. So the produce now that is coming, or that will be coming in the near future, it's going to revolutionize even other industries. Will create employment, will provide enough fish for our coastal communities, and even some that can be exported to some that can be distributed now to the hinterland, that is now upcountry. Then there will be what you call now the trash fish, or the byproduct of processing. That will be used now to produce fish meal. Fish meal will be used to make fish feeds. So in turn, that now will also convert the aquaculture industry, because there will be enough fish feeds for now the aquaculture industry. So we are talking about now movement, what you call now the fish routes. So instead of omena finding its way to Mombasa, omena finding its way to Nyeri and all the rest of the country, we have different forms of fish, different species of fish, crisscrossing the country, so that now it's cheap and it's everywhere, and it is now available to the communities in Kenya. Before we think now exporting to DRC, to maybe the other countries that we export to. And when we have that kind of a scenario now, that means we'll have enough, so we will not have those imports that are coming to China. So we'll not have questions of safety, because there's a lot of concern about the safety of fish that is coming from China. And by the way, it is very safe. So our communities will be able, in the sense that they are the ones who are producing, and we'll become self-reliant as a country. I think that's all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mwangi. Now to Joyce from World Food Program. In your previous presentation, you talked about the opportunities that have been available to be able to mitigate for shocks and resilience, like layering the nutrition into various programs and supporting the value chain. I'm wondering, in terms of moving into the future, do you see other opportunities that do exist for us to mitigate shocks and resilience that can actually be incorporated into sustainable food production for vulnerable communities?
Yeah. Thank you, Terry. So for all that we are doing right now, what does the future look like, or what is going to be our forecast for the future? The good thing, government structures, both at national and county level, are becoming stronger and stronger. So we are already aligned with these government structures, but we also have to support them. What do I mean? Things like the universal health care. Because for resilience to work, we need to assure basic services. Resilience means that, when a shock comes, you will meet with it, or you will interact with it, but you will be able to stand somehow, or it will hit you, but you will still come back, So for households, for individuals to come back, we need to have a set of basic services that are assured. And this is the direction that government is moving towards. So that even if my crop fails, if my livestock something happens, at least I am guaranteed access to healthcare. I'm guaranteed access to education, those basic things, yeah. So I think moving forward, I think we have to support government to strengthen the availability of these basic services. And then also for the resilience, the food security interventions, these big interventions that actually target 50% or more of the population, how can we strengthen them in such a way that we are actually reaching to scale and we actually have nutrition objectives within these interventions, so that all the various sectors, not only agriculture, but education, water, is looking at nutrition as an outcome. What is my contribution to that? Because health, really, we are waiting for people to be malnourished. Then they come to the health facility. But we need the other sectors to also have that as an objective, so that they are contributing to prevention. So moving forward for WFP, it will be less of treatment, but more of prevention. That means looking at the underlying causes, looking at, those basic causes. How can we prevent people falling into that state where now we're in emergency? Yeah.
So the focus there from Joyce, which is really moving us into the future, is really prevention, 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 and looking at the underlying causes. And they are usually not health, they are nutrition sensitive. So how do we do that? How, David, we know that nutrition and agriculture sectors are essential to increase resilience of households. How can we make the current resilience building interventions or activities supported by US government more nutrition sensitive?
Thanks. I don't know. Oh, just kidding. It's a challenge, right? I mean, this is totally what she said. It's the underlying aspects, right? And so health, we tend to see specific interventions very readily, but what's the role that women play in the household, what in the communities for decision-making powers to do this? What are aspects around income generation, whether it's through agricultural productivity, other opportunities along the value chain, not just as producers, but also other things that we talked about earlier. People were talking about SMEs. So we're looking at kind of a spectrum of issues to really think through that. But all our activities through our implementing partners have a very specific nutrition outcomes. And what we're trying to do is take those outcomes and then mold them into, like we were talking about with the county governments, of how do we create a robust monitoring system so that we're all kind of walking the same road. We're not kind of parallel playing in different sandboxes, but that we're actually going towards the same goals in terms of nutrition. So, like I said, nutrition is embedded in everything we do. The Southeast, what we're trying to do, and I think is a good, what we've already been doing in the North around Prague, is within Makweni, Taita Taveta, in Katui counties, is really looking at those humanitarian caseloads, which nutrition is also a key integral role in how do we move those families forward in those caseloads and those groups. And once they transition from World Food Program, is then to take them on board with our activities to look at production issues, access to finance, which I think is another aspect we tend to forget about in terms of resilience and even nutrition, is having that kind of access to innovative aspects of finance. And I actually like what the other group was talking about as well, is about nutrition, around insurance. I think insurance programs are extremely important. I know WFP is doing some work around that as well. So I think these kind of packages, these innovative packages for resilience, I think are extremely important. So taking those WFP groups along, and then graduating them, if you will, and it's a little bit risky to say that word because it has different definitions in the resilience world, but certainly transitioning them to another level. And then we have our large flagship activity is all about market systems within key value chains. So one is, how are we looking at the county and to pull them to the market? Right? And so we could talk all day about production, but if that market isn't there, it's, what are we doing it in terms of that? But really a stepwise layering process. And I think this is what we're really thinking more and more around. I would also argue that I think in our focus, and you'll hear this a lot from the US government around the journey to self-reliance. What we're really also thinking about is what is the role of you? What is the role of public participation for you? How do communities in and of themselves, along with county governments, voice their needs, their strengths, their assets to move that dialogue along, to move this? And so I think it's key, and if we think in terms of nutrition, like I said, it's all different, it's very multi-sectoral, but we all need to share that road together, and I think that public participation part is what we're thinking more and more about, and how to engage you all in that process towards self-reliance. So that's all I'll say.
Thank you. Thank you very much, my panelists. I'm sure they have broadened our view of how we can sustain nutrition and resilience at the household level. But I'm sure you have additions. You have comments, you have clarifications. We will take 3 or maybe 4, because there are 4. Let's take first 4 questions. They will respond, and then after that, we'll look at time. Yes, we have 1 here, then 2, then 3, then 4 there.
My name is Jogona Kamau. I'm from the State Department of Livestock. My question goes to the CEC Isiolo. I think it's a question and a comment halfway. You give an elaborate, the elaborate strategies of what we are doing in Isiolo to enhance resilience and also mitigate climate change. And I think that is very commendable. However, like in many pastoral communities across Kenya, we have this challenge of overstocking. Even when we are able to predict a pending drought, animals have reached market weight, yet for pastoral communities, marketing of livestock is not really what they've been looking at, and therefore, again, you end up finding very low offtakes, animals' conditions will worsen and worsen, and then very huge losses. But if you look at having a proper marketing plan at the household level for the livestock, I think the pastoral areas are more highly endowed than even what we today call the very productive areas in our country. So I just wanted to know, I know you just gave us a snapshot of the strategies. I just want to know whether marketing of livestock is somewhere in your plans, and if not, why? And please consider that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. The second one. Thank you, participants. Keep it short. Thank you very much, Mr. Njuguna. The next ones, keep it short and up to the point, and this panelists also, because of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Rosemary Nyamo from the Kenya School of Agriculture. Yesterday we launched the curriculum on nutrition. And I want to ask the CEC Isiolo, because we are going to be in-servicing the extension staff. What is the status of extension in your county? And I think you say that you have 9% budget to agriculture. How much of that is going to agricultural extension? And then for Joyce, you said you're covering about 400,000 cases in a month. I'm sure that is in partnership with the Ministry of Health. So how are you linking Ministry of Health and the agriculture sector in production of crops, which I've not heard Isiolo talk about, so that we create diversity in the diet? Thank you.
My name is Simon. I work for NHP Plus Samburu. My question goes to Mwangi from the Ministry of Agriculture. We understand that the agriculture is devolved, especially the fisheries and other department of agriculture. What's the national government doing, especially in terms of utilization and production of fisheries in ASAL counties? Because that's one of the gap. People, in terms of utilization, no one is used. Yes, they produce fish. We have Lake Turkana, people produce both Samburu, part of Samburu, Turkana County, and Marsabit, but utilization is poor. And I understand the county government, they have employed some staff to implement the fisheries activity in the county, but in terms of capacity, what the national government is doing? Thank you.
Last one was
Thank you very much. My name is Esther Umosa. I work under the Accelerated Value Chain Development Program, AVCD, funded by Feed the Future. Great presentation from the panelists, and I have two questions and a comment. The first one is to the Department of Fisheries. Just inquiring, how do we redistribute the fish, for example, that we are importing in Turkana? So it's also accessible to some people. For example, you find people in Kisumu are not able to afford fish that is locally produced, but they are able to afford fish that comes from China, burning lots of carbon prints to arrive at the port in Kisumu. So that's one, redistributing fish internally within the boundaries before we go outside. The second comment is to the Isiolo County government. I know you have invested in different interventions and especially support for the community health volunteers, which is great, and we commend for that. And maybe if you could talk on behalf of other counties that have not invested in nutrition sensitive interventions, case in example, really supporting CHVs to do their work at the community level. That would be great. And the other thing I've learned from Joyce WFP, that for resilience to actually be sustained, we need to have the basic services going on. That was a big highlight. But I also wanted to find out, how are we engaging different stakeholders, and in this case, the private sector. I know we are working hard to engage the communities, who are great, but how are we engaging the private sector? Because we know if the private sector comes in, then we get sustainability. Thank you.
okay. We have a set of, those are a lot of questions. I don't know whether anybody has a question for our development partner, or everything was very clear there. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm Simon Nyaga from Tharaka County. My question is, you find that in this nation for many years, developing partners are doing marvelous and good work. But I have one question. You find after the developing partner, the program is over, we are back to zero. Such that from the time immemorial, 1980s, 90s, 2000, the programs are perfect. But the uptake by the Kenyan government is almost zero. Whereby you find like now there are so many programs in every county, and they are very soon going to withdraw. What is the continuity of this program as far as the partnership of the USAID, developed partners, and the government of Kenya and the counties? Because that's a big gap in this nation, and unless the government take their law, we're gonna do a lot of zero work. After we achieve many things after 1 or 2 years, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, later we achieve zero, because you cannot rely 100% on partners, and you yourself, you are not doing anything. So what are you doing as you are planning to pull out from the many counties, engaging the government, both in the national and the county government, to take their rules? Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. The first batch of questions, we had a lot of questions for the county, and let me invite Mheshimiwa here to respond to the questions.
Okay, thank you very much. One, I wanted just maybe to add a little bit on the first question, because when the question came, I didn't react, give all the answers. One of the way we are making sure that women are involved in these resilience issues is keeping poultry. Actually, we are promoting poultry farming, especially in the peri-urban, and we find that chicken is like a livestock, and there's no competition with demand when it comes to that. So, and even children. The other issue is on honey production. We are also promoting honey production in Isiolo. We have a small refinery, but what I saw here actually here is something different because they are making candles and making maybe some pomade for using. I think I will also go and tell the factory that these are some of the byproducts they can be able to use. We have also built a modern slaughterhouse for the poultry, such that at least the hotels in Isiolo can get meat which is certified. Now coming to the question of Mr. Njuguna Kamau on overstocking. I agree that pastoralists keep these animals sometimes as sentimental and for prestige. But going forward, we are looking at issues whereby now they can keep these animals on commercial basis, whereby they can sell and get money and do other interventions. And what we are doing is that initially what pastoralists used to do, they keep these animals, and then when they get very emaciated is when they are willing to sell. They get very little, like 8,000 shillings per animal. At the moment, of course, now that the drought is coming, KMC has already shown some interest to come and buy those animals in Isiolo, and already we are trying to identify the people who can buy and then maybe take the animal to Kenya Meat Commission. Kenya Meat Commission used to be used as a market of last resort. When you have nowhere else to take the animal, then you take it there. But now we are feeling that this pastoralism should stop being that pastoralism we are talking about should be a pastoralist, somebody who keeps animals, not just to be moving with them around, but he keeps them, feed them, and then he can sell them and get a amount of grass which they have in excess, and then we can buy and use it to our animals. The other issue is we are promoting feedlots, such that people can learn from those feedlots and see that an animal can be also good during the dry period. So you can buy the animals which are getting emaciated, come and fatten them within a short period, and then you make profit. And once they see that, there is going to be mindset change. We are also promoting conservancies. We have found that conservancies are also doing very well in that area, because at the same time we are also making that environment to regenerate. That is the rangeland which has been in so much degraded. Okay, on marketing issues, yes, we are also doing a lot. We have actually developed around 15 livestock markets together with the livestock marketing LMS, which is a USAID-funded partner. We are working with them, and these markets, we have put what you call Livestock Market Association, LMAs, which is coming from the community. Community members, we form them like livestock market associations. And we want them to be sustainable. What we are doing is that we have put a legislation whereby we can share the proceeds of the market together with these livestock market associations, that the county gets 60% and they get 40%. So we have, as a cabinet, we have already accepted, and we have passed that idea. We are waiting to take it to the county assembly of Isiolo to be ratified. Once it is through, then the LMAs can be able to get some money, and as well as we getting money, and that way the community involvement will be more, will be enhanced. The other issue I want to talk about extension, yes, we have a need in Isiolo, as aged workforce all over the country. People are retiring en masse, but we are wondering, because now a caveat is being put by the austerity measures, saying that people should not be employed for the next 3 years. I was feeling that those who are going through retirement, that is the attrition, they can be allowed, because they are not having any stress on the budget, we can be allowed to recruit. And personally, I'm happy. The Isiolo County Public Service Board has been informed, and I'm going to write an intent trying to propose that extension workers be increased. That one is a good idea. But going forward, extension, we are doing it on group-based approach. We don't do on individual. We do on group-based approach, where we meet people at the irrigation scheme, where they're doing a little bit of irrigation, and also even at the watering points for the animals. And what we have done differently, we have stationed somebody at the Huduma Center. Huduma Center is at Isiolo, so we have gotten a desk whereby people who have got questions, they can go and ask that officer of ours who has been stationed at the Huduma Center in the Isiolo town. And at the same time, we are also using SMS. These phones, actually, they are assisting a lot because people can ask you questions, even about animal diseases. They ask, and sometimes you give them information using the mobile phones. That is that's happening in Isiolo. Then the other issue is on the CHVs. Yes, this program on community the volunteers is working in Isiolo, and to us agreed they can be given a stipend, something small, so that at least as they are working as volunteers, they get motivated. We have a good number, about I think it's over 700 in number, and they are doing a lot. And you see this green business, they are low cards. I think most of you have not seen them, but I saw them around. They are good, so that at least the CHV, once they are conversant with what is there, then they can go and teach people at the grassroots, because they are looking at the primary health care. Prevention is better than cure, as it has always been said. So in Isiolo, we are trying to do the CHV approach. And also, it is good to note that Isiolo is one of the models where universal health coverage is being piloted. So we are getting, I think, that advantage. So I hope after now the pilot is found to be working, to be extended to other parts of the county. And what we have done is that the county government of Isiolo has been quite passionate on health, because we found the distances. People used to go for health centers was very far. So we are making the distance nearer and nearer. And also we have employed qualified doctors. Actually now, CCN section can take place in the remote towns of Marti and even Karbatula. So that is a positive, and we are very happy because of the county government, because things are happening, as they are happening in other part of the country. And now through collaboration again with the U.S. Army, state-of-the-art equipment for laboratory have been put in the Isiolo Hospital, Teaching and Referral Hospital. So we are saying we are equal to Nairobi in terms of diagnostic measures. So that is something which is happening in Isiolo. I think very soon people will be coming to Isiolo for diagnosis instead of going upwards this side. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mwangi, you had 2 questions?
Okay, my first response will be to Simon. Simon, you are concerned about Turkana and Samburu counties, and I think that is specifically in reference to Lake Turkana, the capacity of the fishery staff that is there. Okay, Lake Turkana is a trans-county fisheries resource. So that means it is not devolved, and it is devolved. The national government has got interest there when it comes to now conservation and management. But again, the 2 counties, the issue of post-production activities, the marketing and so on, that is the honors of the county government. But we work together, we work in collaboration. When it comes now to the capacity of the county staff, the national staff is responsible for now that capacity building, and we have actually been doing that. There is a program that is funded by Treasury on what you call sanitary operating procedures. So there has been intense training on that. And the specific target is that so that we can have quality fish that is being handled in Turkana. We used to have a factory there that was processing Nile perch. It collapsed because it could not meet the standards of the EU market. We had a cold storage. It's not functional. So what you will realize that the low quality fish goes to DRC. So, but the sensible quality fish goes to Kitale, to Kisumu, and so on, to the lower rift. So we would want a situation whereby that high quality fish gets into our counties. And we don't have anything that goes to DRC, because even the prices that are being sought in DRC, they are quite low. So again, this will be enhanced The State Department has been split or has created some 3 institutions that are very key to management and marketing. There is a Kenya Fisheries Service, so it's a parastatal information. There is a Kenya Fish Marketing Authority, which will be very key into making those systems work at, in the lake Turkana. And then there is a Kenya Fishing Industries. So I know they are always going to, they will also invest in Lake Turkana. Currently they are in Mombasa. So the issue of now production and utilization will balance out, and that will be a good thing. I think that answers you. So, Madam, at the corner, you were concerned about now the distribution. It's the same answer I'm giving Simon. The fish from China. So we are trying to encourage that as a region. So there is how you can control trade, because you see you cannot block any products that is coming from anywhere in the world so long as you are a WTO signatory. So the controls that you are having are clever controls in the region. And that will be achieved by maybe escalating what you call the common external tariff. So the East African community has agreed to put the tariffs for whole fish tilapia, whole fish that is coming from China and the rest of the world at 100% duty, that is, or 1.84 US dollars, whichever is lower, or whichever is higher, sorry. So you see, that will stimulate now our fishermen producing, our farmers producing, because the cost of production in China is about $1 per kilo. So by the time it's landing in Mombasa, fish is 150 shillings, duty paid. So when you go to Kisumu, fish that has come from China is selling at 200 shillings a kilo. Fish that is being produced in the lake is being produced at 370 shillings a kilo. So you can see the equation there. So that is why we want to, through those tariffs now, we can control that equation such that fish that is coming from China will get in here at maybe around 300 shillings or 200. So our local producers now can compete with whatever. But at the end of the day, we would want to increase our capacity. And that is why I was talking about now the exploitation of the blue economy. So if, and God allowing, if we can be able to produce, say, 200,000 metric tons from our sea, and we have infrastructure such that that fish is getting to all the corners of the country, cold chain storage, we have warehouses in select maybe counties that are high producers or high consumers, then we do not need to have any imports from any country. So maybe we can just restrict the imports to what you call now the high end, the temperate fish and so on that are maybe used by the expatriate community or people who are used to those temperate fish. So, and of course, as I was saying before, sensitizing people on, you can consume any fish. So if people in Kisumu see it's tuna that is coming from the lake, it's good. People from coast seeing it's omena that is coming from Kisumu or from the Indian Ocean, from the Lake Victoria for that matter. So let people, what you call now in nutrition we call it preference. Let there be preference for all the species of fish. So in that way I think we'll be able to make sure that distribution has actually been achieved across the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Joyce?
Thank you. So I will respond to 2. The first one was a clarification on the 400,000 that I mentioned. The 400,000 are those who are food insecure, and they are across the arid counties, so about 8 counties. So it is not only in Isiolo. it is the population that we have targeted. So they are not really malnourished, but they are more food insecure. And this is the same population that now we will layer these health and nutrition interventions, and that will be their interaction with the Ministry of Health Services. So we have the layering amongst the 400,000. We also have the farmer groups that now we will put together and see how best do we support their value chains based on what they are producing. So all these interventions that we are saying we will support in terms of nutrition sensitivity will happen among the 400,000. So I hope that is clear. The next question I'd like to take is on the private sector, and Navneet is here. I hope you can back me on that. But I think there is opportunity for the private sector in the arid counties. But we all fear the arid counties given the challenges in security, the distances, the level of development, but there is opportunity. And for us to get sustainable solutions for this region, we will have to be able to actually work with the private sector. But that means knowing private sector, they must have value for money. So it will not be just anything, but whatever they are supporting, they are getting their money out of that. And I think that is something that we really need to be cognizant about. I think we have opportunities around nutrition sensitive programming, about this value addition, all these things that we're doing in terms of resilience, supporting livelihoods. I think this is a good opportunity for the private sector to come in, whether it is crop or livestock. But as I said again, it has to be an environment that the private sector can work as well as thrive. Yeah.
Thank you, Joyce. David?
I abstain. Thanks for your question. I'm going to speak for AID, not for the development partners in general. Okay, so it's coming from AID. One is, I think, if my mission director was here, he'd probably come and give you a hug. This is a question that we ask ourselves a lot in the mission. And if I guess from my personal view, if it's what's left is zero, we've got a problem. All right, and so our whole intent is leaving something behind. And so, I mean, you're talking about the private sector. I mean, private sector, I think we work very much with the private sector. One question I have specifically is, who is the private sector, right? Because we think it's this one entity out there, but no, it's a whole slew of actors. And so what we're trying to do with AID and some other partners is trying to galvanize what's that voice of the private sector. And there's platforms already, but how do we kind of galvanize that voice around that? And of course, the systems that need to be in place. So to answer your question, we're working more concertedly with the Council of Governors, specifically in agriculture, because we do, agriculture, health, we all know there are devolved aspects, and so how do we make sure that budget line gets down there, that funding gets down there, but there's voice in that space, right? And so using the Council of Governors as that kind of mechanism to then work with the county governments. We've talked a little bit, the CC talked a little bit about ECOLO around the FCDC, the economic. We're shifting, as I mentioned earlier, around what we're calling self-reliance, but really around local actors. And so how are you the ones that are helping address those development aspects, those problems that exist, the needs, the funding? So we actually just sent out a while back, what we call an APS, annual program statement, all over Kenya for activities, proposals within those counties for local actors to think about. And we got a plethora of proposals. And so we're going through that process now. We'll be working with counties in waves and phases. But really concertedly with local actors in unison with the county governments to really look at those self-reliant aspects, engaging those local actors, funding those local development organizations that we're calling in these counties. So it's certainly a different mentality that we're taking in USAID, and a different modality or method of how we're actually engaging people in the development, we want to put it. To really gauge what the communities want in what they need, and how then can we help them on that journey? Hopefully that answers your question. Oh, thanks.
Thank you. I would have said we stop there, but I'm eating into your lunchtime very briefly because we have this group here, which I must apologize, told I had neglected you. 2 questions, 1 male, 1 female. 1 male, 1 female. The female is there, a male, male. Oh, they're all female. Oh, at next. Then we are done. Then we'll have Professor here 3 and we are done.
I'm Esther Kagore from Kenya It's NGOs Consortium, KANCO. This country, to a great extent, comes from external sources, that is from donors. And we also know that the sources are now decreasing. What is our government, or rather, what strategies is our government putting into place to address that gap that will be left? Another question is also to our government, both national and county. Our silos, the grains that we mostly have there are mostly the carbohydrate-giving grains. That is maize, and to a great extent, rice, looking at what we produce in the irrigation schemes. What is the government doing to address crop diversity so that it can deal with the adequate quality and quantity of food that we give to the citizen?
Keep it to 1 question, please. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll keep it to at least question and a half. I'm Alfred Ejem from Action Against Hunger. My question goes to the development partner, that's one. We know and we appreciate the support from the development partners, including USAID, but for quite some time, we've seen them supporting programs. But again, we've seen the number of people being chronically food insecure, food insecurity is always there. It's been a chronic issue in this country for quite some time, and yet development partners are doing a lot of investments, especially in northern Kenya. So in your own perspective, what are some of the indicators that you propose, you think within your strategies, that after 5 years of maybe Feed the Future, for example, or Partnership for Resilience and Economic Growth, that after 5 years or so years, we'll be able to graduate these people from being food insecure or from being nutrition insecure to a place where we call them, they are now nutrition secure, and we don't again target them in anything, whether the shocks are there or not. So if you can actually explain to us what strategies are there. And then the next question is to World Food Program. We've been told, and I appreciate Joyce from World Food Program, that it is about the issue of the scope and scalability of the programs, and you are targeting the food insecure households. But you've seen, we've been told that by the end of this year, the next 3 months, we'll have 3 million people who are food insecure. And if you look at the target population, it's only 400,000 from World Food Program. If you do a bit of arithmetic, a simple arithmetics, you find that it's like 1 out of 7 are being targeted. And yet the communities that are food insecure are interdependent. They share the same resources. So that means we'll not make meaningful impact if we are targeting 1 out of 7 food insecure households. So what are some of the strategies that you ensure that we sustainably make sure that there is food production, productivity to cover all these people who are food insecure, so that the caseload doesn't increase per year or per month, but we have a sustainable number. A number that are food secure throughout. Thank you.
Thank you. Prof.
Thank you very much. My comment was going to be to enhance what was said by our development partners, the American people, and then the minister from Isiolo about this resilience or bouncing back. Marketing was seen, especially of livestock, was seen as the way to go. But then the marketing that was emphasized was the marketing of the live animals, as well as the slaughtered meat. They are putting up an abattoir for slaughtering the animals and they sell meat. But I want to tell them that we just have had a project on meat and milk in the pastoral regions. And one of the things we looked at is the possibility of processing the meat into the traditional products, because those are, they are long lasting, so they can stay longer than fresh meat.
Thank you. So that brings us now to 3 questions or 4. The ones to do with the government. We have the national government and we have the county government. Please, can you share those questions?
For cooking, because
production. He mentioned about improved infrastructure. He mentioned about research. He mentioned about technology. He mentioned about credit and finance. And I think those are the key areas so that you can make sure that the government is making sure that production increases.
I think I wanted also to support him that the national government is doing a lot, and especially on rainwater harvesting, and they are doing mega dams like Isiolo. They've got a big one called Kilimani Game Kalana, which has a large capacity, and it is likely to transform the lives of the people there once it is completed. It's costing almost, I think, about 125 million, and it's already the weir has been put. They're waiting the rain to come, and then the water is trapped there. The other issue, there wasn't quite a number of small water pans. The problem is they are not secured because people are falling there, they are drowning. So we are looking at the way we can be able to fence those the water pans. Then the concern of the professor is that actually I will give him support. We like that in Nyeri, yes, but it has been happening like a cottage industry, small business. It's not a big business like this abattoir, which will be a game changer. So I think some of the meat which will be coming from the abattoir, we can also have an outlet for the local industry, where by these ladies, they can also be able to put this meat into Nyeri. And I want to partner with him, can come to Isiolo, then we can see what we can do together to do the promotion of that technology. Because actually the research is supposed to have the technology, come to us, then we try to implement together. I think it's a good idea. I like it. It's welcome.
A point?
Yes. Okay. To Esther, you also asked about irrigation. It's true that there's a more focus on production of rice and maize, and your concern was about producing of more nutritious foods. And I think what was in your mind could be maybe vegetables and so on. So in small holder projects, that is usually the focus. So the government is not lost on maybe that focus on the nutritious, the vegetables and so on. And again, I would also suggest that once there are those kind of big projects, you could also have baby projects, maybe production of fish, production of traditional vegetables and so on. So it's a good thought.
Joyce.
Thank you. So we still have questions around the 400,000. Now, the 400,000 is, okay, I will call them beneficiaries. The beneficiaries targeted for resilience programming. So we are with them for a very long time, not just for the emergency period. We are working with them for the next 4 to 5 years. But we still have the relief beneficiaries. And a good chunk of the 2.6, the 3 million, are actually relief. Now, the government of Kenya has been very forward thinking, and actually in 2017, when we had this big drought emergency, WFP partnered with the national government to implement cash transfers. So we did that, I think, in about 13 counties, and we reached a good number of people, those who are affected by drought. Based on this experience, for the current drought, the national government is also going to roll out cash transfers without a development partner support. So now we are seeing government increasingly taking over relief which I think is progress for the country because we are not really relying on development partners, but the government has actually taken this up. So that is what is going to happen. So the 2.63 million are going to be the responsibility of the government, and they are planning around that.
So thanks for your question, I guess. It's an excellent question. And so I'm going to go back to several points that I made. One is this whole APS system that I talked about with the local actors. I think this is our shift. This is our shift across the country to really look how to engage this from a lens of vulnerability. So we understand that in some of our efforts, we've missed that opportunity. We've missed the fact of how have vulnerable families actually benefited from our activities. And so we're thinking more and more along as you as real constituents or clients of us now, as opposed to other ways. So I mean, I know we're pressed for time, and I could talk a long time about our strategies from various levels, from policy, from regional efforts, because Kenya does not happen in a vacuum. It happens in the EAC and others. So we have a regional FTF program that looks at a lot of aspects there around food safety, trade, and those other things that have real kind of importance. But certainly policy work at the national level, because that's the policy mandate, right? And so then how do we work at the county level around implementation? But so the thing I really want to mention is the suite of services. And we're looking more and more conservatively of how we layer our investments across within USAID, because this is also a USAID problem, all right? We work in our silos because of funding sometimes, and it becomes a bit onerous within our own agency, but how do we work with an environment? In dealing with land tenure issues, for example, how do we work with health, right? I mean, we've been talking about for the last day and a half now is this, real collaboration with health. But how do we work with our health office? In doing so, that's why I talked about Esther, right? So Esther has these needs, and so how do we layer the suite of investments is kind of that she can access? And so that's part of the strategy, but we're also very much, our stuff is around private sector engagement and creating those markets that can bring people up. So it's not always working at the vulnerable household level, it's working with intermediaries, lead firms, middle-level farmers that can pull up, right? But there's a whole slew. I just turned over a rock and there's 16 other problems there that I'm not going to get into. But it's really complex and it's frustrating, but it's development. But we cannot work in silos, and I would say that for our organization in terms of how we coordinate with other donors, but also how do we coordinate with the local government, and how do we coordinate with communities themselves. So it's a very valid question that we're really, really looking at. Specifically, we have a very robust learning and adaptation agenda within our mission. Just one example, at community levels, we're thinking about how do we develop business associations as part of that public participation to actually help galvanize businesses at the county level. So there's a whole myriad of things that we're trying to look at, and I'm not even talking about the high-level objectives that Feed the Future really is after, because we're in 17 counties, 5 in the north, 9 in the west, and 3 in the east. And they're there for a specific reason, because they're the highest incidences of poverty. Poverty is resilience, poverty reduction. So how the two are synonymous with each other. So thinking of the strategies of how we really do that in these three kind of different contexts, because the north is very different from the west. But looking at the trade corridors, because you can't tell me a person in Kitui doesn't have relationship with the people in Garissa. So it's understanding those corridors as well in what's happening in those counties. So I know I didn't answer your question, but you're welcome to come with me, and we'll talk off to the side, and I'll let Mildred answer all the questions. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's what everybody else should do who has questions. The panelists are with us. Still come and see them over lunch hour. There was one last question. The county nutrition coordinators, you were asked a question by David. Let's get one. Yes, Flores.
Thanks.
Mike. Come on up. Come and talk here.
Thank you so much for that question. I think it will answer a lot for us nutrition as a sector. My name is Esther Florence, and to answer you, the problem is lack of prioritization for nutrition as a whole in all sectors. And I want to take it from my experience. I've done a lot of advocacy. And if you go in all levels, even at the government level, even the governor knows me personally. But when it comes to funding for nutrition, the MCAs will allocate. Eventually, when there is less disbursement, nutrition will suffer the first cut. And that tells you it is about prioritization for nutrition in all angles, in all sectors, in all levels, starting with even individuals here. How do we prioritize for nutritional health? So if we are able to manage that, then we will really take nutrition to a different level. And of course, for starters, especially to the USAID funding. Yes, my colleague talked about road to self-reliance, whereby now we have to show how we are going to manage minus the funds. I think it is high time for all projects that is being funded by any donor, starting with USAID. What are they putting on the table for nutrition? Whether it is a resilient project, what are they handling in terms of nutrition? And then that will influence mindset change. I believe I've tried, because I don't want to go to the nitty-gritties. If we answer that, then we'll have a big solution for the nutrition problem in the country. And I wish you gave me a chance to ask a question to WFP. Yes, that will also relate to what he's saying, and it will unearth a big problem. WFP started a seed funding for homegrown school feeding program, if you are aware. There was a presentation on that was showing how investing in school feeding was going to give us serious economic gains. If whoever listened to that presentation, or I don't know whether that was a dream. Now, I'm happy that the government, you handed over to the government, and they are even supporting. There was issue with the food diversity. You are now tackling resilience project on OFSP, that is the orange flavored sweet potato, that will really help on energy and even vitamin A. But I did not hear from your presentation how you are linking with that school feeding program. Because one of the major problems there, the schools are being fed with the food from other counties. So as you are developing, or rather improving the livelihoods through the OFSP, I did not hear you talk about relating to the previous project that you successfully handed over. Could it be that it was just a dream? And on top of that, you started it very well. Please, I'm talking passionately. You started it very well in the Asal region. I want to give a case of Migori County. Usually when you refer to Asal region, Migori is usually added Asal +1. Why? Because the indicators are almost the same. Once you start a project in the Asal region, it picked up well. Why didn't you go to another county and also put a seed money to start a good nutrition project in the school, which will also give us returns economically? Why did you leave that, or have not had you operate in another county and then go to resiliency? Please, I wish that I get answer for that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, give a clap. Yes, that's very courageous, and we need to talk, isn't it? There are many issues, we really need to talk. Thank you very much, Florence. You've highlighted a lot, and she's been able to stay. So I want to take this opportunity to really thank the panelists. It has been a very, very, very informative panel. Thank you for shedding light to many issues. This whole issue of resilience, when the word came around, it was like a very big vocabulary, yeah? And I still think it is. There are many things around it. We really need to unpack it and really know what is it that we are saying at the household level, because that is where we really need to build resilience, because that is where the shocks and the stresses impact most. So once more, Thank you very much, Mr. Mongela, Mr. Mwangi, Joyce, and David. Thank you very much for really being with us and shedding light on this very important topic. Let's give them a round of applause. Before we break for lunch, and kindly just remain seated, I want to invite my fellow organizer to come and make a statement, a small announcement. And we are very late. We will also be guided on how much time we should take for lunch. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Apologies for standing between your lunch, but can we appreciate the panel a little bit more? That was really awesome. WFP, you still owe us an answer, but it looks like the moderator wants us to go for lunch. So I wish to thank you all. I just want to make a few announcements. Just by way of introduction, my name is Sylvia Wichuli, and I'm the organizer behind the scenes, so you won't see much of me. But today I wanted to make an announcement for two reasons. Number one, yesterday there was some confusion about whether people should leave their bags or not. This is Nairobi. Please do not leave your bags. A couple of people have lost their bags, especially the conference materials, because they all look alike. Please carry everything. And the reason why we want you to carry everything is because we are breaking down